Hello, Buktuf. I was running and thinking, I figured it would be a good time to give you an update. I am about to leave Galicia. I'll be leaving to Portugal tomorrow. And although you might not be able to see this video now because this is a new phone, my other phone just fell on a bucket of water and it was already quite broken. So you might experience some improvement on the quality of the images, but other than that, the videos will still be delayed just because I don't really know how to upload things on this new phone, and it might take a while for me to get up to speed. So yeah, I mean, there's not much else to update you other than that. Like, the real reason why I wanted to make this video is just to talk. You know, I find myself running over the coast of South Galicia in North Spain. This is the place where I grew up. I'd like to say that it hasn't changed much, but every time there is less green and more grey. And finding places where there is no people becomes harder and harder and harder, which is nothing that I haven't been able to notice over time. I feel like for people who lives fixed on a place that they can call home, it's easier not easier to deal with it, but easier to notice, perhaps, than for people like me. It's only when I come to places like this that have been like sort of like my ancestral homes in terms of like my family tree rather than my own homes, that I do feel the change of the world. And although I feel like places by the sea have a lot of stillness, they are still affected by what we civilized people call progress. Yeah, this is not a home for me. It's nothing but a material manifestation of a vague memory of a past that doesn't really represent me, but somehow still made a significant part of who I am. I haven't lived anywhere for more than 6 months. I've been inside of countries for more than 6 months, but never in the same place, in the same region for more than 6 months, which has as many pros as it does have cons. I guess I don't have a sense of belonging, which is something that many people long for. My sense of belonging is more toward the kind of places that are disappearing. In all of the places where I have lived, every single time I found a place that felt like home was the kind of place that was within the margins of that society, within the margins of that little reality, very much clandestine, sometimes even in the literal sense. And when I am forced to come back to one of these places and see the decadence that we have forced upon the ground, I just feel a sort of existential claustrophobia, I'd say. Definitely, when I've been forced to be in places, reading has helped me. Traveling as a whole has always been a form of fleeing for me. It was imposed on myself as a child. I come from a very unstable household, so it came natural. I always thought I would stop the cycle of that constant fleeing from one place to the next, but it turned out that was something I need. The only time I tried to become sedentary, it nearly killed me in the physiological as well as the more ontological sense. And I'd like to say that fleeing has ceased. Perhaps in some senses it has, because I have accepted the things that I'm running away from are not only never gonna go, but keep expanding to every single corner of this planet. I know this feels very abstract, but I don't know how to talk about this being more specific without being too personal, without telling too much. And I feel like if you want to understand what I mean, you will. And if you can't, then you wouldn't be able to, even if I gave you specific examples and anecdotes. Yeah, I've been able to elude that feeling when I was in the UK through studying. I identify myself as a student, which is the same, which is to say a philosopher in my own understanding of the world. I think that anyone who craves for knowledge and is willing to change his ways or mind for what they find out to be truer than the previous state of mind they had is by definition a philosopher. That's why I never found that term to be pretentious or anything like that. But I'm just gonna check that the camera is still recording because I don't know how to see that from here. Perfect. Yeah. It was just a form of illusion of that feeling. I was escaping, I was traveling through books. And after a while, books start to give me the same sort of existential claustrophobia. When a book becomes too familiar, when a kind of book becomes predictable, when I cannot help but see through the plot twist and all the way to the tragic ending or wherever. I don't want to give specific examples, but this has happened to me a couple of times lately on books that I just had to put down not because they were bad books, but I was seeing through them so much that they felt all too familiar in the most terrible sense of the word for me. And this attitude, this tendency would maybe lead you to believe that would not allow me to see deeper into things, right? Definitely there's a form of looking around you that allows you to dig deeper into whatever you are inhabiting, rather like either intellectual world or a material world, tangible or intangible, it doesn't matter. Reading a book that you already knew through from the beginning 10 times will give you a kind of understanding that it's very hard to get with a single read, and not even to talk about if you don't even read a book or leave it halfway, which is what I have done with a couple of books lately. Similarly, staying 6 months in every place that you are would not allow you in principle to live in that place to the degree in which you would sort of like melt with your environment and understand that form of living. I feel like although that form of thinking seems logical, and I myself have referred a few minutes ago about this form of living as a form of fleeing, I think it's entirely wrong. I think that most people live without using their capacity to observe and live the world around them in any way deeper than the most basic and necessary for survival. Which is to say that most people lives and dies on the same land, completely unaware of what it is, what it contains. More than once within days, I've been able to show people things on their neighborhoods that they wouldn't even dream of knowing by themselves, although they were there for years or decades. So in a sense, not belonging anywhere has made me curious about everywhere and has allowed me to explore and realize and recognize the same features in different places. At this point, I feel like traveling is no longer a search for the new. The people is the same everywhere. Some superficial customs change, some attitudes change. Every now and then you have something you have never seen before. You meet someone with a kind of personality that is purely authentic and that you would never be able to predict or reproduce in new. It's the same with books. But that wouldn't change. That is the same either way. We live surrounded by the familiar, and anything that breaks with that is the exception rather than the rule. And for that reason, I don't think that my fleeing or my traveling is a form of escape from that familiar, because I think that although more through the lines, perhaps, the familiar is everywhere, and is it can be perceived in any place, no matter the background. But that awareness is not what makes a place home. That knowledge, that understanding of the place that you inhabit is not what makes it, what gives it the label of something that you call home, which is something I've never been able to call anywhere. And at the same time, I call every place I visit and I spend time in. I don't travel as a visitor. I generally live and work and study and sleep and do all the things that a person that lives in a place does when I am there. I don't think I've been a tourist since the first time I started traveling by myself, and even before that. For me, it's just moving out of one place and moving into another one. But I do, to a degree, flee from a certain kind of attachment, a certain kind of dependence that people who only rely and live on one single place have. Just like you only have one job and you lose that job, you lose everything. If you only live in one place and you can only call one place home, you eventually lose it, you lose everything as well. And as I said before, I feel like, you know, on a more ethical or philosophical sense, I live in a world in which I am inevitably and irremediably and inherently on the losing side. I've become a person with certain ideals and a way of life and a way of seeing the world and behaving toward others, human and non-human. And the world is going in one direction that is diametrically opposed to my own ideals. And perhaps my fleeing, my escaping from one place and getting into the next place is my own form of trying to escape the touch of any sort of attachment that would make me dependent on a world that's dying, on a being that is part of that losing side and that will go before me. I don't know. This is all pretty improvised. I haven't, as every video I make, I don't never have a script or anything. But I just thought it was something I wanted to verbalize and communicate to you, because you see and will keep seeing background changing behind me, just as you see books changing and passing through my hands. And I am not less implicated with the world, with my own ideals, with my own readings, just because I change from one genre to the next or anything like that. I'm just, I don't know, in a constant flow that doesn't want to stagnate. Monotony, routine feels like stagnation to me to a degree. Perhaps, yes, to a degree, I'm escaping from the decadence of a world that, if it were to manifest itself to me daily in a place where I would be able to build a codependent relationship with it, it would break me to see it collapse. But also, it's a sprint to see as much as I can and to connect with as many as I can before that collapse, which I find inevitable. I have completely accepted being on a losing side. I will never be an activist or a terrorist or even a, I don't know, even a reivindicative writer or musician or anything like that. I just orbitate this planet, you know, until I go, and everything goes. And whatever comes first, which you never know, but probably will be me. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's, you know, that's me. That's where I am now, after, you know, running for a while with some music in a familiar place. That's what comes to my head, and I just wanted to share it. I hope you have been able to follow my train of thought for as far as I could. I kind of got lost halfway through. And yeah, let me know if you agree with anything I said, or you disagree, or what do you think. Thank you, Buktuf.